Everyone is given a name when they are born. Simple enough, a name is a very convenient identifier. Or so I thought until I went to Taiwan and someone asked me what my Chinese name was. Chinese name? Why would I have a different name for a different language? For the locals, this question was weird because everyone has an English name in addition to their Chinese name. But since when did names become the private property of a language? People don't and shouldn't have to change names every few hundred miles. With people's names, it's not so hard to clear up the confusion since the person in question has the final say in deciding what he or she wants to be called. But where it does get hard is names of places. See, places unlike individual people have been around forever and their names cannot be as arbitrary. They carry with them a historical and etymological significance. That said, place names can be very confusing because of the utter lack of uniformity across different languages. Sometimes they transcend different languages and sometimes not so. In general, at least at the international stage, countries use their English name, since English happens to be the politically dominant language. Except when they don't. Côte d'Ivoire always wants to be called Côte d'Ivoire, irrespective of the language being used at the time of reference, but Japan is perfectly fine with Japan as opposed to its native Nippon. Differences in names can be classified into two. Cognates, which are etymologically similar, that is names with only a slight variation which have occurred due to transliteration and or sound shifts and or just simply due to the independent development of languages after the original name was coined. All the names are called cognates of each other. Here are the many cognates for England. The other type are non-cognates, which don't have a similar etymological root and were coined independent of each other. Germany probably leads the list for this and is known by many different non-cognates. Why is this even important? Number 1. Names are a source of identity. Ask Taiwan, who unfortunately has to use the name Chinese Taipei at every international event. How weird is it for them to not be able to use their country's real name and instead use a strangely worded name which no one is happy with? This is also partially the reason why no one knows Taiwan as a country. Another example is the change of the English cognates of Indian cities to instill a feeling of local identity. Strangely, the country continues to use the English cognate, that is India, internationally. Number 2. Names and words have a history and etymology. This is closely related to the first point but subtly different. The Netherlands in French is Pays-Bas, which means lowland, which sounds okay and seems objective enough considering Netherlands is a low-lying country. But the US in Chinese is called Meiguo, which is probably a cognate but despite that literally means beautiful country. And Italy in Polish is Włochy, which is similar to the word for hairy. Also, on India's independence, people didn't want to call it Hindustan, fearing it might alienate non-Hindus and instead chose the word Bharat. Ironically, the people who originally had come up with the name Hind for the region were non-Hindus themselves, and also its cognate India is still used today. The other official name, Bharat, which was meant to appeal to non-Hindus, actually comes from ancient Hindu texts. Number 3, and the most important, for the sheer lack of confusion, Croatia is also called Hrvatska natively and Switzerland is also called Helvetica. And the code for their currency everywhere in the world is HRK and CHF, which no person can guess without knowing beforehand. How am I supposed to know this stamp is from Hungary? People don't know which order the countries are going to follow during the Olympic Games opening ceremony. Everyone in South Africa missed out on watching their athletes because they came in third as the Portuguese names were being used. The Czechs also got a raw deal and got bumped down to the 186th position. On all other occasions during the Olympics though, the English names were used. And sometimes some people can be very pedantic and in that case even cognates start posing a problem. The official at the airport would not let me check in for my flight to Brussels because my visa said Belgique and Belgique, but not Belgium. So now that the world is one giant place and not isolated islands, how do we decide what to call each place? Does the place get to decide? Sounds sensible enough as long as the people in that place can somehow arrive at a logical conclusion themselves. This doesn't really get rid of cognates since they are bound to develop. For example, there is no way one can write Mexico in Chinese and the name they use is Mo Shige. Or should the users of the name decide? Shouldn't the Chinese be allowed to use whatever name they want to use for Mexico when they are speaking amongst themselves in Chinese? But then this is where the whole problem started. So much confusion but no way to resolve it. If you have an idea, write it down in the comments below and hopefully it will catch on and put an end to this mess.